Hi, this is New Time on Silkway TV channel. We introduce you with the most visible news and important events that happened throughout this week in Kazakhstan and Central Asia. More details on politics, economy, social and cultural life with opinions from the most recognizable experts of Kazakhstan and world. I'm Dauren Sagulov, and now we begin. And let us start with this week's top news. The crash of an Azerbaijan Airlines Embraer 190 near Aktau, Kazakhstan. Today, Brazil sent 3 Air Force investigators to assist Kazakh authorities, with experts from Embraer also joining the investigation. On December 25, the day of the tragedy, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev ordered the creation of a state commission to examine the crash. The commission, along with a team from Azerbaijan, arrived at the scene that same day. Kazakhstan's Minister of Internal Affairs is personally overseeing the investigation, and a criminal case has been opened. The head of state immediately extended his condolences to the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev.
Sharing the sorrow of this irreparable loss, I extend my heartfelt condolences to you, the families and loved ones of the victims, as well as to the people of Azerbaijan. By my order, the government of Kazakhstan has established a state commission to take all necessary measures as part of the rescue operation and to provide further support to the Azerbaijani side.
Let me remind you that there were 67 people on board of the Azerbaijan Airlines flight from Baku to Grozny, including 5 crew members. Among them were citizens of Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Russia and Kyrgyzstan. 38 people lost their lives, including 6 Kazakh citizens. And today, President Tokayev received a phone call from his colleague, the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev. The two leaders discussed the progress of the investigation and expressed confidence that it would fully uncover the causes of the crash. During the phone conversation, Aliyev thanked Tokayev for the rescue efforts and praised the work of Kazakh responders who took swift action and played an active role in aiding the passengers affected by the tragedy. Chinese President Xi Jinping also sent a telegram of condolences today to Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. In his message, President Xi expressed deep sorrow upon learning about the tragic loss of lives, including Kazakh citizens, in the crash of an Azerbaijan Airlines passenger plane near Aktau. On behalf of the Chinese government and people, he extended heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims. And let's move on. On December 25th, President Tokayev paid a working visit to Russia, where he participated in an informal CIS Heads of State meeting. The summit focused on key priorities and prospects for further developing mutually beneficial cooperation within the Commonwealth of Independent States. Initially, Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev was expected to attend. However, after being informed about the tragic plane crash, he returned to Baku. It's worth noting that the meeting began with condolences to the families of those who lost their lives in the Aktau crash. During the discussions, CIS leaders reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening cooperation in transportation, logistics, as well as the oil, gas and chemical industries. To recap, Kazakhstan's cooperation with CIS partners remains a key focus of its foreign economic policy, accounting for 25% of the country's trade turnover. The very next day, on December 26, President Tokayev participated in the meeting of the Supreme Eurasian Economic Council. As a result of the meeting, Iran was granted observer status at the EAEU. Members of the Eurasian Economic Union also signed a comprehensive free trade agreement with the Islamic Republic. Additionally, participants amended the Treaty of the Economic Union and outlined prospects for the further development of integration processes within the EAEU. More details in our next report. As per protocol, the Supreme Eurasian Economic Council meeting began with the heads of state discussing all key issues in a closed, narrow-format session. During this session, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan reviewed the results of his country's chairmanship. The agenda discussed behind closed doors covered a wide range of topics, including the formation of a unified electricity market, harmonization of legislation in finance, customs, and the creation of a single services market. An essential point for both consumers and producers was the expansion of the union's market. In the extended format session, Bakujan Sagintayev, chairman of the EEC board, announced that Iran has officially become an observer country of the EAEU, paving the way for new trade opportunities and boosting trade turnover.
New markets, as you know, Iran has a population of nearly 90 million. But the question remains the same as when we had a temporary trade agreement in 2018. Last year, full-fledged trade agreements were made, and now Iran becomes an observer country. This means that many trade barriers, including tariffs, will be lifted, allowing free movement of goods between our countries. Naturally, this will increase trade turnover between our countries, providing support for businesses primarily in the agricultural sector, which is likely the current area of focus.
Iran today maintains close ties with each of the EAEU member states. The prospects for deeper cooperation are well-founded, driven by its transit potential through the Trans-Caspian transport route and strong trade and economic partnership.
The most important things that were discussed about free trade between two countries and between the Eurasia Committee. It was actually regarding to previous discussions that we had earlier in Armenia, and we concluded that we can spread our economy in both countries, and we can actually increase our trade services to each other.
Observers of the organization also presented their proposals. Uzbekistan called for the removal of trade barriers and tariff restrictions, while the president of Cuba expressed a desire to expand cooperation. By the end of the Supreme Eurasian Economic Council meeting, 23 joint documents were signed. Serik Zhamangarin, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Economy, outlined key plans for 2025, including the development of a unified electricity market and the expansion of trade relations.
It's been a dynamic and successful year. A lot of issues have been resolved in terms of advancing conceptual documents. I think there's still quite a bit of work to do. I'm wondering when we will adopt the agreement on shipping. This is crucial for our countries. Next year, we'll have significant work on oil market. Moreover, today we will also discuss the formation of a common electricity market.
Over its 10 years of existence, the EAEU's combined GDP has grown from $1.6 trillion to approximately $2.5 trillion, while mutual trade among member states has nearly doubled, reaching $87.5 billion. However, there are still many shared challenges ahead. These will be addressed in the new year 2025 under the chairmanship of Belarus. Daurina Sagulov, Ainur Mangali, New Time. This week, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev held a meeting with Minister of Energy Almas-Adam Satkaliyev to review the year's achievements and discuss plans for developing Kazakhstan's energy sector. The talks covered major oil and gas projects, energy initiatives, the heating season and the performance of key heating and power facilities. The President also stressed the importance of accelerating the nuclear power plant project. Kazakhstan has already begun official negotiations with potential suppliers of construction technologies. A final decision on the supplier of consortium is expected by 2025. In 2024, Kazakhstan welcomed 30,000 new international students, setting a record for the country's education system, Minister of Science and Higher Education Sayasat Nurbek told New Time. Summing up the year, the minister highlighted several achievements in science and education, including the establishment of 34 new campuses of foreign universities. According to Nurbek, the ultimate goal for his ministry is to position Kazakhstan as a major academic hub by creating favorable conditions for the construction of international university campuses in the country. More details in the following report. It was a good year despite all the difficulties, said Sayasat Nurbek, summing up the academic results of 2024. The Minister of Science and Higher Education stressed that the idea of an academic hub is now taking shape and Kazakhstan is beginning to see the first benefits. This year alone, 34 leading foreign research universities have decided to establish their presence in Kazakhstan by opening branch campuses or forming partnership with local universities. A significant milestone was achieved with Cardiff University, the first Russell Group University university to come to Kazakhstan, and there's even more to come.
It is the very first time in history of the Wales that a Welsh university is opening an overseas campus. It is a major breakthrough. KAIST, Korean Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, is about to launch next year. Coventry, the British 175-year-old British university, opened up a first branch campus in Kazakhstan, here in Astana.
Thanks to these new campuses, Kazakhstan has started reaping the benefits. This year alone, 30,000 foreign students came to study in the country. On average, these students contribute around $10,000 per year, which the ministry considers a significant resource of revenue. By 2029, officials aim to increase this number to 100,000 students.
An interesting fact, for the very first time this year, we have more foreign students from Asian countries than from CIS countries. So then we have flow of students from China, from Mongolia, India, South Africa, who would have thought, Germany, Australia. We had a first batch of students from Australia at DMU, De Montfort University in Almaty.
Ambitious plans require adequate infrastructure. Over the past 2 years, the ministry has faced criticism for shortage of student dormitories. However, according to Sayasat Nurbek, by the end of 2024, almost all regions of Kazakhstan have been provided with sufficient dormitory spaces, with the exception of the country's largest city, Almaty.
Only one city will remain, which will have deficit of beds and dorms, is a city of Almaty, obviously. But so far, so good. We have covered 19 regions of Kazakhstan. There's no deficit and no demand for dorms anymore.
There have been some positive shifts in the field of science. For 2024-2026, nearly $35 million have been allocated for grant funding to support research by scientists. Additionally, investors finding scientific developments will be offered tax deductions. These became possible due to the adoption of the Law on Science and Technology policy earlier this year.
So we finally adopted new law on science and technology policy, introducing some major breakthrough mechanisms and tools to relaunch our scientific and research policy. One of them would be giving tax cuts to private companies to partner with research institutions and higher education institutions. 150% of tax cuts were introduced to incentivize, to motivate private companies to go into research and adopt and invest in research. The new draft of the tax code will include 300% of those tax cuts.
Nevertheless, funding for science in Kazakhstan remains modest. For instance, the South Korean government allocates 4.3% of its GDP annually to science, Nurbek noted. In Kazakhstan, the figure is currently just 0.24%, or $1.2 billion. However, Kazakhstan plans to increase this to 1% by 2027-2028, concentrating all efforts to achieve this goal, said Minister of Science and Higher Education. Daurian Isagulov, Saken Pioneer, New Time. Reflecting on the successes in Kazakhstan in 2024, Dr. Ayjan Akhmadi, a research scientist in biotechnology at Nazarbayev University, and her team have made a groundbreaking discovery in Parkinson's disease research. The result of their year-and-a-half-long study, published in the prestigious scientific journal Nature Communications, reveal a new function of a protein linked to Parkinson's disease, which, according to WHO, affects 1% of the global population today. Notably, this is the first publication for independent Kazakhstan in a journal of such high caliber. According to reviewers, the findings of Kazakh scientists could lead to new diagnostic methods for the diseases in the near future. We discuss this fundamental discovery in details with Dr. Ayjan Akhmadi herself. Please watch the following interview. Dr. Akhmadi, thank you very much that you agreed to do this interview. It is a pleasure to talk to you. Let me start with this question. In this episode of our program, New Time, we're wrapping up the year. And I know that 2024 was highly productive for you as well. Could you please tell us about your research and your main achievement?
Yes, thank you. Yes, this year was extremely productive and successful for us because we could finally share our results with the world research community. Particularly, we discovered a new function of a protein that is linked to Parkinson's disease. Basically, this protein has been studied for like 20 years and nobody knew exactly or define the exact function, but we could prove a new function. And this function now probably could explain more how Parkinson's disease might develop. And maybe in the future, hopefully, like in 20 or 30 years, we might have therapies based on our results.
Initially, this hypothesis was proposed by a group of European scientists, right?
Yes,
and
yes.
you proved it.
Yeah, yes. So we were kind of second to show results, to show studies that prove that this protein is a protein that helps protect cells from toxic metabolites. Yes, our colleagues from Belgium, they proposed this theory that they draw the molecule, and we started studying in this direction, and we succeeded. But we also developed a method to define this function.
So I suppose the results of your research now can be considered as a breakthrough in breakthrough in treating the Parkinson's disease, right?
Well,
or treating is not the right word.
Yeah,
right?
in the research.
In the research. So
yes, we believe so. Yeah, definitely. This is a breakthrough. As I said, like for 20 years, researchers doing a lot of studies about this protein. The interesting thing about this protein, it is everywhere in bacteria, in human, like in all living organisms. But people don't know why it is important to have it, why it's evolutionarily conserved. So it must be very important. So now people can actually start a new direction in this research. So probably it was really great it was like a stagnation in this research area about this protein, and now researchers can finally find new methods and also maybe develop new tools for detecting Parkinson's disease and diagnosis. So it has a lot of aspects, not only fundamental science and also commercialization tools.
Speaking about commercialization, how do you think, how many years will it take to apply the results of your research into the real products, treatment, or?
Oh, well, if we talk about commercialization, it's not only about drugs.
Yeah.
It can be, in our case, it can be as a diagnosis tool. So it probably might take 5 years, I suppose, if we start working on it now. And we will try. Our team is planning to apply for commercialization projects. But in terms of treatment, it takes, of course, many more years, decades to develop something. So, for instance, in order to develop a drug for Parkinson's disease, we need to know what happens in the cells. So we still don't know. So are we putting our small little understanding in this area?
I see. I guess fundamental research is not quite profitable for state, but anyway, any responsible state or government must invest in fundamental science. How would you assess the current level of government support for your kind of work, for your research and science?
Yes, of course. It's a very good question. The fundamental science is never profitable as public, for instance, public transportation. But if we don't have public transportation, we won't have economic growth. Yeah, people won't get to work on time. So the same with science, fundamental science. We need to fund it. The government understands that it is important to fund it so that the other part of science develops, like applied science. But in Kazakhstan, I think it is quite good funded, especially in the last years. And particularly for young scientists, they have different opportunities to get funding and start your own research. But another thing is that applied science is also funded by state in our country because we are a new country and we don't have much industry support at the moment. But I hope that it will increase and more funding will go to fundamental science.
Yes. I've got one last question. In few words, what plans do you have for the next year?
Few words. I am going to establish my own lab. I'm going to apply. I've already applied for a grant so that I will have my own research, and I will start studying further using our methods and our results, because right now there is a lot of opportunities in our topic. So it's like if I go abroad, I can do it there, but I don't want to do that. Like I want to do this research here in Kazakhstan, especially when we have a lot of opportunities. And in Nazarbayev University, we have excellent equipment, research facilities where this all can be done if properly managed and planned.
I see. Dr. Ahmadi, I wish you luck with your new lab and thank you very much for your dedication to this work. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The year 2024 was filled with moments of joy and sorrow, excitement and unease. From the war in Gaza and the US presidential elections to the global shift toward the political right and the ongoing fight against worldwide poverty. Last week we reflected on what the past year meant for Kazakhstan. Today we take a look back at global events through the stories of New Time reporters. Addressing global poverty will take more than 100 years, according to the recent report by the World Bank. The organization states that around 44% of the world's population currently lives on less than $6.85 per day. The World Bank suggests tackling poverty through two main approaches. Wealthy nations should reduce carbon emissions, while other countries should focus on increasing citizens' incomes. We discussed the exact topic in March this year with Nobel laureate in economics Abhijit Banerjee. The MIT professor and his colleagues proposed a groundbreaking method for combating poverty: field experiments. These experiments involve testing government programs on small experimental groups before scaling them nationwide if successful. This innovative approach is already being implemented by the governments of 80 countries and has earned the highest recognition in the scientific community. In that interview for New Time, Professor Banerjee recommended an effective tool for addressing poverty to the government of Kazakhstan.
If I had to pick one thing, I would say that there is now reassuring evidence that providing some income transfers to the poor works. It makes them richer without creating, I said at the beginning of this interview, that without creating any perverse effects. So if I had to suggest one thing, either an income transfer, an asset transfer, there's a whole literature on whether it should be income or assets, and there are arguments on both sides, and given time I could say all those things. But I think this is relatively simple in the sense that it doesn't require, designing a whole infrastructure to for example, to improving schools or improving healthcare. These things are long-term infrastructural investments, and whereas making transfers is relatively straightforward.
The June elections for the European Parliament did not escape the attention of the new Time team. In 2024, the European political landscape has undergone significant changes. Voters in 27 countries have elected more far-right members to the European Parliament, shifting the body further to the right than ever before. My colleague Balzhan Samigulina reported directly from the heart of the EU, Brussels, where she spoke with members of the European Parliament. The general trend is clear: the rising popularity of the far-right electorate, which means that the citizens of this category are primarily concerned with the issues of migration, inflation and low incomes. However, in an interview with Silkway, Bas Eickhout, a member of the European Parliament from the Green Party, pointed out that even the European far-right is divided on a range of issues.
But it's very clear that with the rise of the far right, you have more national centrist parties in the European Parliament, which is usually not making Europe stronger. And I think the international geopolitical challenges for Europe are undeniable. And I think we now in the European Parliament need to search for a new stable majority that also delivers on a strong geopolitical Europe that will also reach out to the regions around Europe where we need to work with.
In July this year, the global agenda on key issues was discussed in Kazakhstan's capital during the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. Among the attendees was UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. My colleague Ainur Mangali had the opportunity to conduct an exclusive interview with the UN Secretary-General. He shared his insights on the summit, its collaboration with the United Nations, and Kazakhstan's role within the organization. Please take a look.
And I think the cooperation of the UN and the Shanghai Cooperation Council can contribute to this bringing together the different parts of the world, and to limit the damage caused by the fact that the superpowers are at odds with each other. And when the superpowers are at odds with each other, countries like Kazakhstan have a very important role, and organizations like the UN and the Shanghai Cooperation Council have a very important role to make sure that we are able to address the conflicts, to make sure that we are able to establish more justice in international economic relations, to reform international financial institutions to the benefit of developing countries.
The United Nations was born out of the ashes of the World War II. The 5 victorious powers of the deadliest war in the history sought to create a structure capable of preventing similar conflicts. However, today it is evident that the vision of a world without wars has not been fully realized. Moreover, the global balance of power has shifted significantly. In recent years, calls for reforming the UN Security Council have grown louder, including from the President of Kazakhstan. These calls, however, are not limited to politicians, but are echoed by prominent scholars. In September, we spoke with Barry Buzan. In an exclusive interview for New Time, Professor Buzan, a co-founder of the Copenhagen School of Security Studies and a fellow of the British Academy, argued that while the UN Security Council is outdated, reforming it remains an almost impossible task.
The existing set of institutions was designed for what I call the Western world order, right? So designed by and for the West, by and large. And there's a lot of resentment against those organizations because of the distribution of influence and voting power and all of that within them. Things like the United Nations Security Council are very important in political and legal ways. But what are Britain and France doing sitting on the Security Council? That's ridiculous. So the Security Council is completely out of date and almost impossible to change, right? So the Chinese will veto India, and they will veto Japan, and other people will veto Germany, and the EU isn't quite properly a state, so how do you deal with that? I could go on.
One of the main topics in global media this year was, of course, the US presidential election, and for good reason. Beyond the undeniable significance of US policy in global geopolitics, the election itself rivaled the best dramatic series in terms of intrigue. From the withdrawal of leading candidate Joe Biden to Kamala Harris' historic bid to become the first female US president, to the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and ultimately his sweeping victory. The race had it all. New Time closely analyzed the entire presidential race. My colleague Balzhan Samigulina consulted American experts attempting to predict the outcome. However, the complexity of US electoral system forced experts to make cautious forecasts, even when preliminary polls showed Trump leading in key swing states.
We can talk about Trump leading by maybe as much as 1 percentage point on average in the key 7 battleground states, but that's 1 percentage point, and we need to take into account sampling error, other errors associated with doing surveys, and especially errors associated with estimating exactly who's going to vote in the election. So the common wisdom about the current election is that the election really is too close to call. We're talking about one candidate or the other having a probability of winning of a little bit more than 50% at most.
In the end, Donald Trump claimed victory, and this led us to question how his win might shape the course of global conflicts. From the early stage of his campaign, Trump vowed to deliver long-awaited peace to the Middle East. By then, a new wave of violence in Gaza was already underway, alongside escalating tensions in the region. After examining experts' opinions, we found that doubts persist over Trump's ability to effectively address the Middle East crisis.
Many are aware clearly of Donald Trump's history of support for Israel. It is unclear, though, how much the U.S. president actually influences exactly what happens on the ground in the Middle East, as we all have learned over and over again. So I think it's often overstated. While it's critical, the U.S. relationship with Israel, the ability of a U.S. president to direct what happens in the way of decisions made by a sovereign government is more limited than people realize.
The New Time team has been covering the Middle East conflict as events unfold. The horrific Hamas attack on October 7 of last year, which claimed the lives of over 1,200 Israelis at the hands of terrorists, led to an immediate military response from Israel. However, the operation against Hamas turned into a catastrophe for Palestinians in Gaza. Various sources estimate the civilian death toll in tens of thousands, which has drawn condemnation from the UN and human rights organizations such as Amnesty International, Reporters Without Borders, and many others. We spoke with numerous experts, including Daniel Levy, president of the US Middle East Project and former Israel negotiator, and Ramin Parham, Iranian dissident and Middle East expert. Both reached the grim conclusion that resolving the conflict, let alone achieving the idea of two-state solution, seems more distant than ever.
I think we will see not only new legal vulnerabilities globally for Israel, new anger and boycotts, but also even new forms of resistance, all of which takes us to the question of two states. And I think the reality on the ground makes two states look very, very unlikely. If it's ever going to happen, Israel's cost-benefit calculation will have to look different, and Israel will have to offer something it has never offered, which is genuine ending of the occupation, genuine Palestinian sovereignty, and we're an awfully long way from that.
The ceasefire in Gaza, as you just said, has simply been forgotten. I mean, the fate of the hostages, no one even talks about it anymore, not even the Israelis. Israel used to stage limited wars, and Israel used to win those limited wars in the past. But now we are facing a completely different solution, different situation. Israel has been at war for 12 months now. In a few days, it will be the anniversary of that disastrous day of October 7. And it has been going on, and there is no outlook for peace.
This is how the world of 2024 unfolded through the lens of New Time reporters. Whether these events will shape the coming years remains to be seen. Daurina Sugulov, Balzhan Samigulina, Ainur Mangali, Zhenerke Aitmagambet, New Time. This was the final episode of New Time for 2024. In the new year, our tireless team will continue to cover the most important events from around the world and Central Asia. You can also catch more special projects about our country on Silkway TV channel. So, Happy New Year, stay tuned, and we shall see you in 2025. Bye.